This is the Boeing 747. Affectionately dubbed the Queen of the Skies, this wide-body jumbo jet became the first of its kind when it first debuted way back in 1969. This plane literally changed the world forever, making mass international transit a reality and reducing seat costs for airlines in the process. Its iconic double-decker hump on the front of the plane makes it incredibly easy to recognize, which typically houses the cockpit as well as a bunch of rows of extra passenger seats. Unfortunately, nowadays, with the development of more efficient long-haul jets like the 787 and the A350, passenger 747s are few and far between, with only 4 airlines still operating them on a regular basis. Not to bore you with all of this airplane lore that I could talk about all day, but the gist of this whole thing is that this airplane is legendary and it makes av geeks such as myself stop and stare every time I see one. Until now, I had yet to fly on one of these beautiful birds, but luckily for me, Lufthansa still flies the 747 daily between Frankfurt and Chicago, where I am based. So when the opportunity finally came for me to fly on this route, do you honestly think I was going to do anything except for fly on the top deck in business class? Are you out of your mind? Of course not. Other av geeks may point out that
Lufthansa first class is actually downstairs on this plane, and it's way better than business class.
But that seat is damn near impossible to book, so for the sake of my ego, I kindly request that we refrain from mentioning that in the comments. And maybe one day I'll be able to fly on that seat and visit the first class terminal in Frankfurt and get a Lufthansa rubber duck from the bathroom, and then all of you guys can come back in the comments and be like, oh my gosh, Jake, you did it. Anyways, let's get to everyone's most pressing question. How did you book this flight? Well, I am so glad that you asked. I transferred 70,000 Chase Ultimate Rewards points to Air Canada's Aeroplan to book my ticket. For those who may be a little bit puzzled, both Air Canada and Lufthansa are part of Star Alliance, which means that through Aeroplan, which is Air Canada's rewards program, you have access to book Lufthansa flights with your points. Air Canada has a hybrid zone and distance-based award chart for their partner flights. This Chicago to Frankfurt flight is about 4,300 miles in distance, giving us an award price of just 70,000 miles for business class. If you think that's great, let me give you one more. My brother flew on this flight with me in business class, but he booked his ticket through United instead of Air Canada, who is also part of the Star Alliance network. He applied for the United MileagePlus Explorer credit card, which at the time had a sign-up bonus of 60,000 miles. Now, unlike Air Canada, United does not have a fixed published award chart, but rather they price all of their award flights dynamically. However, partner flights from the US to Europe in business class do start at 88,000 miles if you can find those available. He already had about 30,000 United miles in his account already, so when his bonus hit, we double checked that there was award space on this Lufthansa flight through United at 88,000 miles. Once we confirmed that there was award space on this flight at that 88,000 mile price, we both booked our tickets at the same exact time, him through United and myself through Air Canada. So how about that? Being able to book a flight on one airline through 2 totally different and separate airlines. That, my friends, is the beauty of points and miles. Rumor has it that somebody in this room has been working extensively on some points and miles content that he hopes to be posting by the end of the year, which includes a complete 10-part series focused on the basics to give you all of the ins and outs and all the information, so then you could do this just like him, and then all of your friends can be like, what do you do for work? Because I don't understand. How do you travel so much? How do you afford it? And also, how do you always fly in business class? I don't understand. Just a rumor though. So the only way you can really find out for sure is if you go down to the bottom of the page and hit that subscribe button, click it, because then in a couple months you could come back and check and see what may or may not come up on your feed. Anyways, now that I got that shameless subplug out of the way, we can finally focus on the thing that everyone came here for in the first place, the flight review. We begin our journey here in Chicago at O'Hare International Airport. While most of the international traffic at O'Hare is in and out of Terminal 5, Lufthansa's departures are actually housed in Terminal 1, which is where we checked ourselves in. Now, the good thing about Lufthansa's departures being out of Terminal 1 is that that is also United's main terminal at O'Hare, which means that is where their Polaris lounge is located. Access to this lounge is rather exclusive, reserved only for those flying in United Polaris business class or for those flying first class or business class on any Star Alliance member airline operated flight. This includes Lufthansa, as we explained earlier, so we had access to this lounge before the flight. Not only was this going to be my first time flying on a 747, but this was actually also the first time I've ever been to a Polaris lounge, so it was a pretty big day of firsts for your boy. Among the highlights at the Polaris Lounge include the dining room, which is an a la carte restaurant with a full menu of on-demand apps, entrees, and desserts. Everything on the menu here is complimentary, so we tried a little bit of everything and were not disappointed in anything we tried. Aside from the restaurant, there's also a self-service buffet with plenty of options, as well as a full-service bar. I obviously had to stop at the bar to try the famed Polaris Star cocktail, which was the cherry on top to my time in the lounge. After a quick pit stop down the rather magical bathroom hallway, it was time to head to the gate and board the plane. My brother and I had the bulkhead seats 81A and 81C in the upper deck cabin, which is filled exclusively with 32 business class seats arranged in a 2-2 configuration. There is also a business class cabin on the first level of this aircraft with seats arranged in a 2-2-2 configuration. I really did enjoy the intimacy of this upper deck cabin, which made it feel like I was on a flight of just 30 people instead of several hundred. Now, the hard product on this plane was quite old and pretty outdated, which was to be expected on such an old aircraft. As you can see, unlike many of the pod-like business class seats you will see nowadays, these seats did not have much privacy between you and the person sitting next to you. I still think it's a fine option if you're flying with a companion, because obviously the privacy aspect won't really mean much to you. But if you're not and you're flying solo, this seat just doesn't quite have that exclusivity feel that we have come to expect from most transcontinental business class seats. Although I will mention that Lufthansa is rolling out their brand new Allegris business class cabin on their entire 747-8 fleet in the coming months. So all of this will change pretty soon here in the near future. This new product will certainly elevate Lufthansa's business class experience to the same level of many of the world's major airlines, but until then, this is the product that we have on the 747. Anyways, as far as this seat goes, the hard product was, again, as expected. Fairly dated and not the most comfortable, but still with that classic Lufthansa minimalistic elegance you'd expect it to have. The provided duvet and pillow were very high quality, and there was an excessive amount of legroom in the bulkhead. The window seat also had this little nook of space between the seat and the fuselage, which was wide enough for me to stuff my duffel bag, and is where I kept my pillow and my blanket when I wasn't using them, which was very convenient. There were not too many bells and whistles in the seat itself. There were just 2 universal power outlets between the seats, as well as 2 individual USB plugs tucked under the middle armrest, which was to my right, sitting in the window seat. The middle armrest is also where the seat controls were housed, as well as where the tray table was stored, which was rather spacious and a bit more sturdy than I thought it was going to be honest. Also within the armrest was the IFE remote, which was pretty standard, although it did have this pretty unique mouse-like feature that I thought was pretty cool that allowed you to control the screen from a distance. And there were certainly plenty of options on the IFE to keep one entertained throughout the entire flight. In terms of extra storage, the only space that was available was this little cubby between the seats that held a water bottle and the Amenity Kit, which I actually didn't even realize was there until the flight was almost over. And because I didn't know it was there, I did not do an Amenity Kit review while I was on the plane, so we'll just do that now. The kit design was in partnership with Porsche, although it is just this pretty simple black bag. The contents of the kit were pretty minimal and only included this pair of socks, some lip balm and face cream, a toothbrush and toothpaste, and this just little peppermint. The surprising thing about the kit is that it did not include individual earplugs or eye masks. Those were not included in the kit. Instead, they were available buffet style, I guess, for lack of a better term, inside the lavatory. That's the first time that I have personally seen that kind of setup with an amenity kit on a business class flight. While I understand they likely do that to reduce the waste of these products, which I would certainly support, these are the 2 products that people use the most in the eye mask and the earplugs. And there wasn't any direction from the crew that these two items were in the lavatory. So unless you actually went to use the lavatory before you went to sleep, you would have no idea that they were there. Luckily for me, I did use it before I went to sleep, but the least that they should do is, if you're going to not include these things in the kit, at least make it well known to everybody that they're in the lavatory so that if people want them, they can get them. In my opinion, it's just these little small attentions to detail that really elevate the experience of the business class. So this to me was a little bit of a miss. Pre-departure service included a glass of Lufthansa's signature aperitif called Avionic, along with some mixed nuts. And before we knew it, we were on our way to Frankfurt. Shortly after takeoff, the cabin crew brought around some fresh hot towels, after which it was finally time to take a look at the menu. The highlight of this flight was without a doubt the food service. Dare I say, it may have been the best catering I've yet to try on an airplane. The menu had a wide selection of flavors, and not to mention an expansive wine list to complement. I started things off as one does with a glass of Prosecco as I waited for my first course, which was a butternut squash puree with cauliflower and carrots paired with a warm pretzel roll and a side salad. The side salad was a tad bland, but other than that, the puree was spectacular. For my main course, I chose the beef fillet and potatoes, and oh my god, was this so good. An airplane steak has absolutely no business being this good. I was floored. And then for dessert, I went with the apple bread pudding, which had a bit of an odd texture but tasted very succulent. Huge props to Lufthansa on their catering. They really knocked this out of the park. Once the meal service concluded, I of course had to order a nice refreshing Kolsch while watching Hard Knocks bear down forever before kicking it back to catch some Z's. And in another amateur move, I did not get a clip of the bed while it was in lie flat mode, so props to me, well done. But I can blame my brother on this one because he actually fell asleep before I was done watching Hard Knocks, so I obviously wasn't going to disturb his slumber just to get a clip of the seat. I mean, that would not be very nice of me. In all honesty, though, there really wasn't much to show. There was no mattress pad or cover for the seat, so unless you were sleeping on top of the duvet without a blanket, you were just laying on the seat as is. And it just was not comfortable at all. I really can't mince my words here. I was able to get a couple hours of sleep, but given that this plane and seat had been flying for so many years, there really just wasn't much support left on the cushions. If there is any business class seat that really does need a mattress topper or an extra layer to sleep on, it's this one. But again, with the new Allegris business class cabin coming, I certainly understand why Lufthansa is not keen on investing anymore in this hard product. And as we always like to say on this channel, say it with me now, it could always be worse. You could be sitting downstairs in economy, so shut the f up. Anyways, I awoke from my slumber to yet another delicious meal, this time breakfast, that consisted of a little croissant, some meat and cheese, a chia seed pudding, and a warm cup of tea. The sun came up over the clouds as the meal service concluded, and the cabin crew came around with a parting gift of some Lufthansa branded chocolates. Our initial descent came just after we passed over the Netherlands, at which time I hit the bathroom to freshen up, and before we knew it, we were on the ground in Frankfurt. And there you have it, my first ever flight on a 747 officially in the books. As much as I would have loved this to have been the best flight ever, we have to be a little realistic here. Putting aside the novelty of flying on a 747 in the upper deck, the overall product just isn't competitive. It's not what we've come to expect a long-haul international business class flight to be like. While the food and the service were both spectacular, the hard product obviously left a lot to be desired. It's old and it's outdated, and everyone can see that, and that's exactly why Lufthansa is investing in a completely refreshed business class cabin from top to bottom. I am very happy to see that they will be retrofitting their entire 747-8 fleet with the new Allegris cabin. And that's great because with that kind of investment, it's clearly signaling that they intend to continue flying the Queen of the Skies for the foreseeable future, which we can certainly all celebrate together. Now, would I use this product again? I don't think I would go out of my way to to do it again now that I've kind of got that first novelty 747 flight out of the way. If we're talking just the Star Alliance network, I would easily choose a product like United or Swiss or Turkish to get to Europe if I had the option and there was availability for me to choose from. But I wouldn't go as far as saying I would avoid this Lufthansa product if there was availability and it fit within my travel plans. I would certainly only do it if I was flying with a companion or somebody I knew because of that lack of privacy. But with Lufthansa's impeccable service and catering, it still really was a pleasant way to cross the Atlantic. Especially if we're talking about a good points and miles redemption through Air Canada or United like we were able to get this time around. I certainly do look forward to trying the new Allegris cabin at some point here in the future. That's for sure. Anyways, that will wrap up this flight review. Thank you so much for watching as always. I do have a couple more long-haul international business class flights on the docket in the coming months, so be sure to subscribe and stick around for those coming soon. And with all that being said, we will catch you in the next.